Welcome back. We are entering module 2. Chapter 1, we cover the basics, like what is the economics, what is the scarcity, and then we discuss, we spend quite some time on the demand and supply. And I also show you that the mathematics regarding demand and supply. So for module 2, I would discuss a little bit, more about the demand and supply. I mean, in terms of, usually we call this elasticity. And then later on, we will cover consumer theory and something regarding the production, the cost of production, how to, let's say, make the optimized decision, production decision and consumption decision. There are different elasticity we will talk about. The first elasticity is usually we call it the price elasticity of demand or price elasticity of supply. And then also there are other elasticities, for example, like this elasticity, income elasticity of other products price. Generally speaking, although we haven't, really explained what is elasticity, but this elasticity is more like we measure the responsiveness of one variable, or we call like, if we are talking about the price elasticity, we are talking about that the price change will, how the price change will change the quantity demanded or the quantity supply. Okay, numerator is the change of the quantity demand or quantity supply. The denominator is that the price change. We are talking about the percentage change. The price elasticity, very straightforward, is the price change. We will focus on the price elasticity of demand mainly. Price elasticity of supply is a little different story, but this is more for like the production decision. Before I introduce you that how to calculate the elasticity, I needed to tell you like those very basic terms: elastic, inelastic, or unitary. 3 different cases of elasticity from this definition. So if we call like the price change, the percentage change in quantity, is over the percentage change in price is greater than 1, we call this elastic. Or let's say, simply speaking, this is very responsive. The quantity is very responsive, over the price change. On the other side, that if we have the percentage change is less or smaller than the percentage change in price, then the elasticity is less than 1, right? And then we call this inelastic. So usually like elastic and inelastic, you can imagine that something that if the price change will affect your the consumption a lot, that's elastic. But if like the price change won't change any of your consumption, for example, like gasoline, right? Usually gasoline is a good example for inelastic good. And then the unitary is a very special example, like the change of the price is exactly the same change of the quantity. The function or how to calculate the elasticity is, for me, that it's very helpful, because as you can see that we put that the percentage change in the dependent variable, or let's say that the quantity in this case is the quantity, right? And then over the denominator, which is the percentage change in the independent variable. In our case, is the percentage change in price. This is how we calculate. If we directly talk about the price elasticity of demand, we just change the demand quantity demanded to, let's say, quantity supply, right? So this is a very straightforward formula. Keep in mind, it's not the quantity change alone, it's the percentage of quantity, percentage of the change. Usually we use E to indicate that this is the elasticity, and then measure the responsiveness or sensitivity, doesn't matter, right? So it's very straightforward. And then we related it to like the quantity demanded with the price change. It is very responsive then it's elastic. It is in, or it is very less responsive, so this is inelastic. We already covered that. So regarding this elastic, inelastic, or unitary elastic, copy this from a different source. But anyway, so they are more talking about exactly the same thing. Usually I use this linear demand curve, and then, using this, we have the information regarding the price. We have the information regarding that the quantity demanded, right? So if we have like usually that there will be the point elastic, or let's say we call this the interval elastic, because once we put the A and B together, then we can see the difference, the price change and the quantity change, and then we can calculate the elastic, which is the E. Let me tell you one thing is that the elastic along this, along this demand curve is different. Usually the elastic, the E is bigger, or let's say the absolute value is bigger here, but it's, let's say that it will be smaller in the D area. But one thing that I needed to remind you is that for the demand is according to the law of demand, that we have the quantity and the price, they have like the negative correlation, right? So the change of quantity over the percentage change of the quantity over the percentage change of price is a inverse or negative relation. So in this case, that we put a minus here, but usually it doesn't matter. We just calculate the absolute value, and then if it is greater than 1, we call this elastic. It is less than 1, then we call it is inelastic. And then, simply speaking, this if we give A and B, we can calculate the elasticity already, right? Just give you a quick example here is that how we calculate the elasticity. Let me write this down. So if we have the percentage change of the quantity, which is, that the change is, A to B, we come back again, that if we're talking about the percentage change of quantity, and then this is 6 over 6 with 800, with the change is 200, right? And then this is over what? Over, I needed to find the middle point, which is 700, okay? And then over the percentage change of price, which is 2, the difference 2 over 17. And then if you calculate this, and then the E is something like between, minus 2.43 something. So this is how we calculate that. As I just mentioned, along this demand curve, the demand become less elastic as price decline along a linear demand curve. Yeah, so the demand become less elastic as the price declines along a linear demand curve. Yes, so because the denominator become like a bigger and bigger. In this case, that the demand become less elastic as price declines along this demand curve is because that if you check that along this line, if around the C and D, as you can see that the numerator becomes smaller and smaller, but in this case that the denominator become bigger and bigger. What drives this elasticity? There are different factors will influence that the price the elasticity or the price elasticity. Okay, so first of all is the availability of substitute. Just imagine that if we have many other things, for example, pizza, hamburgers, like usually those fast foods, there are so many, choices, right? If one, let's say, for example, the Pizza Hut, they increase the price. So first of all, I don't need to stick with Pizza Hut, okay? So I can do like, other brand pizza, or I can switch to hamburger or other Taco Bells or whatever. So this become like a very responsive, right? Because that there are like numerous substitutes. Consumers' budget, meaning that that if this is like a very big percentage of our budget, okay, so we spend on these goods, right? So, and then this become very elastic because that if it changes price, that this affected our consumption, this affect our budget constraint somehow, and then that we have to choose or we have to switch to another brand to save money. And I also talk about the time period. if we are like, in a short time that, usually we don't want to change our habits. If we have a, we get used to, let's say, fill our gas in a certain, gas station, and then even if the price change a little bit, we still, go in there. But if it is, the time period is longer enough, like if they are, keep, being expensive than other gas station, and then very likely I will switch, right? It become like elastic. The price change of this gas station will drive me to another gas station with cheaper price. So this is more like, where they become like more elastic. So, and then also there are other things like this. Is it the necessities, or it is like the luxury goods? So generally, I have to say, generally speaking, the necessities like, those staple foods, even if the price change, so we have to eat, we have to feed ourselves, right? So it become inelastic. But the luxury goods become like, quite elastic, because if it is the price change and then we stop consuming, okay, or we stop purchasing, okay. So, and also that's something that related to that the definition of the market. Finally define the market, the more elastic of the demand. So think about the commodity goods, okay? So the change of the commodity goods that or let's say that the shampoos, right? So we can switch our, let's say, choice quickly, right? So, but if this is more like a big concept, or let's say a broader concept, define like a food, hamburger, okay? So it defined very specific, right? So if we're talking about all the meat product, it become inelastic. Talk about the hamburger or sausage, it become very elastic. I can switch my, purchase to another, substitute. Okay, so I think we have already discussed this, showed you that the formula, so that the percentage change of quantity over the percentage change of price. This is very straightforward. And then that if we move this along, let's say that, and then you understand that this is like, we can flip this, the P over Q, right? So this is more like a transformation, and then this helps you to calculate that. First of all, usually we use the midpoint method for elasticity calculation, which is, I just show you that the quantity of the difference of the quantity, and then that we find a midpoint, and then we get the percentage, right? And then the same apply to the price. We find the difference, and then we find that this the middle point of the price, and then we calculate percentage. Once we get the 2%, and then we use the percentage of quantity change over, this percentage change of the price, and then we can get the elasticity. This is one example, and then that we can find the 2 points. For example, like this is A and B, okay? We can calculate the A and B, 3,000, 2,800, this is quantity. 60 and then 70, this is the price. And then as I just mentioned, described, we can use, this formula to calculate. And then the elasticity, that's between A and B, which is 0.45. This is more like inelastic, right? But if we are talking about this H and G point, is it like H and G? No, this is another example. If we calculate H and G, you can try to calculate H and G. The difference is, quantity difference is 1,600, with the 1,800, and then the price is 130 to let's say 120, and then you can use the same formula to calculate that. That one will be something like above 1, okay? So which is elastic. This is another example. That we find a supply. This is the price elasticity of supply, almost the same. But just imagine that the price elasticity of demand usually is a negative, right? But we take the absolute value. In this case, this is a positive. For example, that if we know that those two are like the quantity is 13,000 over 10,000, we can find the difference, we can calculate the midpoint, and then we get the percentage. 26.1 is the percent, okay? And then we find that the price change, which is 700 over, in this case, is the 650. And then we find the difference, and then we find the middle point. We get this 7.4. This is the percentage. And then we put this 2% together, and then we can calculate. This is pretty elastic. Remember, elastic is the value greater than 1 is elastic. So that we know this is a very elastic, meaning the price change will be, the quantity of supply will be very responsive to the price change. The slope of this is flat, okay? It should be a little bit flat.